my mom loves to say that even when I was an infant, more than dolls, I loved to have a pen and a paper and entertain myself. But writing has always been my companion. It's my way of making sense of life. It's my way of getting creative. It's also a form of therapy for me. Unlike so many other things that came and went in my life, there were a few years when I loved to dance and I performed at the University of Toronto, but after a few years, I kind of grew out of it. I was no longer interested in it. Photography was my passion for a few years, but only for 3-4 years, whereas writing has been consistent and steady and reliable. So, but what I tell myself, because it's so easy to say, oh, I don't have time, I can't write. What I tell myself is that if I'm not creative enough to find time to write, then I'm really not a creative writer. So I have to find time. I don't have a choice. When I was in Windsor, I did most of my writing after midnight. Somehow, that point in my life, I could stay past midnight. I was young enough to do that. And with the silence and quiet of the night, I could actually get a lot of writing done. As you have seen in Daughters of Smoke and Fire, it's a fiction that has a lot of history and politics in its background. Living in the Middle East is not easy, but also making meaning out of it, out of all the geopolitics over there, is not an easy thing to do. It's not just difficult for Canadians, it's also even difficult for us. And so through journalism, I was able to go beyond just reading the news and writing about them. I also got to see patterns in the middle of this chaos that somehow repeated themselves. And so it helped me not be so overwhelmed by the realities, but rather in a way be able to make some sort of sense of this nonsense that is going on. Also, journalism gave me the chance to interview so many people from so many different walks of life. And I think that also such a vital and important thing for a novelist, because you hear all these different voices, all these different ways of looking at life and pushing ahead.
Your debut novel, Daughters of Smoke and Fire. It's set in Iran. It depicts a young woman with the family legacy of activism and her struggle to help and support her brother, whose own activism has placed him in great danger. How did this project begin? Did it start with one particular character or voice that came to you?
It's so common for us to wake up to news of execution. This morning, I woke up to the news of Navid Afkari getting executed by Iran despite everything. And that one day in Toronto, I woke up to the news of a Kurdish teacher getting executed in Iran. And I had been following his letters. I wasn't the only one following his letters. His letters went viral on the internet. And everybody loved this man, not just for the power of his pen, but because of, for me, the greatest thing about him was his ability to maintain hope and to keep his humanity intact. So I wrote his story, but he was a man. And even though he's a remarkable hero, I couldn't stop imagining what his sister's, his imagined sister's life would be like. And so I wanted to put these two characters in contrast. Chia, who wants to be a lawyer, who wants to take the perpetrators of crime against humanity to the International Criminal Court, versus Layla, who's interested in arts and in films, and that is her way of making sense of her life, and then how their paths intertwine.
What do you most hope that people will take away from the books and the stories you've written about the Kurdish people?
And I think a book or books like Daughters of Smoke and Fire can help us understand our humanity, or like have us read books that are set in other parts of the world and allow it to reflect back our humanity to us. And once we understand that connectedness, once we understand someone who doesn't look like us or doesn't sound like us, have had such similar experiences as a human being, then we won't be easily manipulated by people who bank on and invest in people's ignorance and fear. So literature is an antidote to fear.
Ava Homa, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me on All Right Sin City.